The grand chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the endless darkness of space, a massive station built to hold representatives from 47 different species. It was here that the fate of entire worlds was decided. And it was here that humanity would make its final stand, not with weapons, but with words. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the chamber. Her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and gleaming armor worn by the alien delegates around her. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her dark hair, and she had served humanity for over 30 years in the diplomatic corps. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, with seats rising in circular tiers like an ancient amphitheater. Holographic displays flickered with translations in hundreds of languages, and the air hummed with the quiet breathing and clicking and rustling of dozens of alien species. At the highest tier sat the Archon of the Thyral Dominion, a creature that resembled a massive serpent covered in golden scales. His name was Vexarian, and he had ruled his empire for over 3,000 years. He looked down at Elena with eyes that held nothing but contempt. The Council will now vote on Resolution 7749, announced the speaker, a four-armed being from a species so old that no one remembered their homeworld. The Regulation of Primitive Species Act. Elena kept her face perfectly calm as she listened to the resolution being read aloud. It would strip humanity of voting rights in the Council, place oversight committees on every human world, and limit human ships to designated travel corridors. In simple terms, it would reduce humanity to a servant race. This resolution is necessary, Vexarian declared, his voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. Humans have been members of this council for only 200 years. They are children playing at the table of adults, and it is time they learned their place. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The elder races nodded their various heads and appendages, and Elena could see the smug satisfaction on their faces. The humans have spread too quickly, added the Prime Minister of the Vareshi hegemony, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes that glittered like black diamonds. They breed like vermin and infest every corner of the galaxy. We must contain them before they become a threat. Elena said nothing. She had learned long ago that arguing with those who had already made up their minds was a waste of breath. The vote was called, and one by one the species cast their decisions. The holographic display showed the results in real-time: green for yes, red for no. Green lights filled the chamber like a disease spreading across a star map when the final count was announced. The resolution had passed with 44 votes in favor and only 3 against. The Kethmari, a peaceful species of crystalline beings, had voted with humanity, as had the Alani, gentle giants who believed in fairness above all else. The resolution passes, the speaker announced, and cheers erupted from the Thyral delegation. Vesharian leaned forward, his forked tongue flickering with pleasure. Let this be a lesson to all primitive species. Know your place, and you will be tolerated. Forget it, and you will be reminded. Elena stood perfectly still as the celebration continued around her. She waited until the noise died down, and then she did something that surprised everyone in the chamber. She smiled. It was not a smile of surrender or acceptance. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Distinguished delegates, Elena said, her voice calm and clear. I thank you for making this decision so easy. The chamber fell silent. Even Vexarian stopped his celebration to stare at the human ambassador. Elena reached into her uniform and pulled out a small object. It was the Council Seal of Earth, a golden disc that represented humanity's membership in the galactic government. She placed it gently on the podium in front of her. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, she said, and her words echoed through the sudden silence. Effective immediately. For a long moment, no one moved. The alien delegates stared at Elena as if she had grown a second head. and Vexarian began to laugh. It was a cold, cruel sound that filled the chamber like poison. The humans are throwing a tantrum. How adorable. Let them sulk in their corner of the galaxy. We will not miss them. Other delegates joined in the laughter, and soon the chamber was filled with the sounds of alien amusement. They mocked humanity openly, calling them children and fools, and worse, Elena waited for the laughter to stop. Her smile never wavered. All human services, contracts, and personnel will be recalled within one standard rotation, she announced. We wish you well. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the chamber, and not a single delegate tried to stop her. You will regret this, Vexarian called after her, his voice dripping with contempt. When your little worlds fall into chaos, you will come crawling back to us. And we will not be so generous the second time. Elena paused at the door. She looked back over her shoulder at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's greatest powers. No, she said quietly. I do not think we will. And then she was gone. The delegates returned to their celebration. They congratulated each other on putting the humans in their place. And they made jokes about how long it would take for Earth to beg for readmission. None of them noticed when the first human ships began powering down their engines. None of them paid attention when human workers started packing their belongings. None of them cared when human technicians logged off their systems for the last time. Within hours, a quiet exodus had begun. Across the galaxy, in space stations and colonies and trading posts, humans were leaving. They did not argue or fight or cause trouble. They simply smiled politely, said goodbye, and disappeared into the stars. The elder races watched with amusement. Let the humans go, they thought. The galaxy would hardly notice their absence. They could not have been more wrong in the days that followed. The greatest empires in the galaxy would learn a terrible truth. They had not been tolerating humanity out of kindness. Humanity had been carrying them on its back the entire time, and now that weight was gone, the fall would be swift, and it would be absolute. And when the dust settled, the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. But that night, as Elena Vasquez sat alone in her quarters aboard the departing human vessel, she felt no triumph. She felt only a deep and profound sadness. We tried, she whispered to herself, staring out at the stars. We really did try. She had hoped it would never come to this. She had believed, perhaps foolishly, that the galaxy could learn to see humans as equals. Now she knew better, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The first signs of trouble appeared within 12 hours of humanity's departure, but the elder races were too proud to notice. They were still celebrating their victory over the primitive newcomers, still laughing at the foolish humans who had thrown away their place in the galaxy on the thorough homeworld of Thesser Prime. High Commander Zorath received an urgent message from his logistics division. He read it 3 times before he believed what it said. What do you mean the supply ships are not moving? He demanded, his golden scales rippling with anger. The logistics officer trembled before him. The human freight captains have left their posts, High Commander. They were operating 73% of our interstellar shipping network. Zorath stared at the officer as if he had spoken in a foreign language. That cannot be correct. Humans are primitive creatures. They could not possibly handle such important work. They were cheap labor, the officer explained nervously. They worked longer hours for less pay, and they never complained. Our own people did not want those jobs, so we gave them to the humans. Across the Thyral Dominion, military supply lines began to freeze. Warships sat idle in their docks because fuel shipments never arrived. Soldiers on distant outposts watched their food supplies dwindle day by day. And the great war machine of the Dominion ground to a halt. But the Thyral were not alone in their suffering on Vareshi Prime, the gleaming capital of the hegemony. The lights began to flicker. The great cities that had stood for 1,000,000 years suddenly went dark, one by one. Like candles being snuffed out, Prime Minister Krikstal summoned her chief technology officer to explain the disaster. "Our power grids are failing across 16 worlds," she hissed, her compound eyes blazing with fury. "How is this possible?" The technology officer spread his forearms in helpless confusion. "The quantum architecture that runs our systems, it was designed by humans. We never learned how it actually worked. We just let them maintain it. Then fix it yourselves." Krikstal screamed. "We cannot," the officer admitted. "Our best scientists have studied the systems for years, and they still do not understand the basic principles. The humans tried to teach us, but we," he paused, ashamed to continue. "You what?" "We told them their knowledge was beneath us. We said we did not need lessons from primitives." Krikstal felt something cold settle in her stomach. It was fear, an emotion she had not experienced in centuries across the galaxy. Similar scenes played out on world after world. The Oridani Collective discovered that their entire diplomatic communication network had been built and maintained by human engineers without it. They could not talk to their own colonies. Mistranslations led to confusion. Confusion led to suspicion. And within days, 3 separate border conflicts had erupted because species could no longer understand each other. The universal translation network, a gift the humans had built and shared freely with the entire galaxy, went offline. No one had ever bothered to learn how it worked because no one had ever imagined the humans would leave. And then came the economic collapse. The Galactic Banking Consortium had always prided itself on stability. For 10,000 years, the great financial institutions had kept the economy running smoothly. But now, as the markets began to crash, the truth emerged: human economists had been quietly working behind the scenes for decades. They had identified weaknesses in the system that no one else had noticed. They had developed solutions that no one else could understand. And they had implemented fixes that no one else knew existed without them. 3 separate currency systems collapsed within 48 hours. The Gemini credit lost 60% of its value overnight. And panic spread through the trading hubs like wildfire. Emergency council sessions were called. The great chamber that had celebrated humanity's departure now echoed with angry voices and desperate pleas. "Where are the humans?" demanded the representative from the Oridani Collective. "We need them to restore our communication systems. Our people are starving," shouted the ambassador from a minor Thyral vassal world. "We need the supply ships to return." "The hospitals are failing," cried another delegate, and only now did they realize that human doctors and nurses have been staffing medical facilities across the galaxy, facilities that the elder races considered beneath their dignity. Arkan Vexarian sat in his high seat and watched the chaos unfold. For the first time in 3,000 years, he felt something he did not recognize. It was doubt. "Summon the human ambassador," he commanded. But his servants returned with empty hands. "There is no human ambassador," they reported. "There are no humans anywhere. They have all left." Vexarian slammed his tail against the floor in rage. "Then send a message to Earth. Tell them to return their workers immediately. Tell them we command it." The message was sent. It traveled across the stars at faster than light speeds. It arrived at Earth's orbital communication station within minutes. Admiral Chen Wei, commander of Earth's defensive fleet, received the transmission aboard his flagship, the Indomitable. He was a tall man with a shaved head and calm eyes that had seen more battles than most soldiers could imagine. "Read the Thyral demand carefully." He considered it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he deleted it without sending a reply. On Earth, life continued as normal. The sun rose and set over green hills and blue oceans. Children went to school. Workers went to their jobs. Families gathered for meals and laughter and love. The humans had spent 200 years building relationships with other species. They had shared their knowledge freely. They had worked the jobs no one else wanted. They had asked for nothing but respect in return, and they had been answered with contempt now. They watched from a distance as the galaxy they had helped build began to tear itself apart. They felt no joy in it, only a deep and tired sadness. Ambassador Elena Vasquez gave a single interview to Earth's news networks. Reporters asked her if humanity would consider returning to the Council. "We offered friendship," she said simply. "They chose contempt. We will not be taken for granted again." The interview was broadcast across human space. On every world and station and ship, humans nodded in agreement. They had tried to be good neighbors, and they had been treated like servants. Never again. Meanwhile, the elder races scrambled to fill the void. They tried to restart their own logistics networks, but they had forgotten how. They attempted to repair their own technology, but the knowledge was lost. They struggled to rebuild their economies, but the damage was too severe. Day by day, the great empires crumbled. And day by day, the terrible truth became clear: humans had never been primitive newcomers tolerated out of pity. They had been the invisible backbone holding everything together. The quiet workers who kept the lights on and the ships moving, and the systems running. The elder races had never noticed, because humans never demanded recognition. They just worked, day after day, expecting nothing but fairness. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was learning what their absence truly meant in his palace on Nessa Prime. Archon Vexarian made a decision that would change everything. If the humans would not return willingly, he would force them. He began assembling a fleet, the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. He did not know it yet, but he was about to make the worst mistake of his very long life. 3 weeks had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the galaxy had become unrecognizable. Empires that had stood for millions of years now teetered on the edge of collapse, and the proud elder races watched helplessly as their worlds fell into chaos. Archon Vexarian refused to accept this new reality. In his mind, the problems were temporary, and force would solve everything. It always had before. He assembled a blockade fleet of 200 warships and sent them to the human colony of New Valentia. It was a small world on the edge of human space, home to only 3 million people, and Vexarian believed it would be an easy target. "Surround the planet," he ordered his admiral. "Let nothing in or out. When the humans begin to starve, they will surrender, and then they will beg to return to their proper place." The Thyral fleet arrived at New Valentia and took up position around the world. The admiral broadcast a message to the colony below. "You are now under Thyral control," he announced proudly. "Surrender your leaders and prepare to accept occupation forces. Resistance will be met with destruction." For a long moment, there was no response. The Thyral admiral smiled, believing the humans were too frightened to reply. Then a single human ship emerged from behind the planet's moon. It was a merchant vessel, old and battered. The kind of ship that carried cargo between colonies, hardly a threat to a military fleet. "Attention Thyral vessels," came a calm voice over the communication channel. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the cargo ship Wandering Star. You have entered human territory without permission. Please leave immediately." The Thyral admiral laughed. "One cargo ship against 200 warships. The humans have lost their minds." But then something strange happened. Panels on the merchant vessel's hull began to slide open, revealing hidden weapon ports. The old cargo ship transformed before their eyes into something far more dangerous, and it was not alone all around the Thyral fleet. More human ships appeared, freighters and transports and passenger liners, all of them revealing concealed weapons. There were only 30 human vessels against 200 Thyral warships. But the aliens felt a sudden chill run through their bodies. "You seem surprised," Captain Santos said, and there was a hint of amusement in her voice. "Did you really think we sent our people into the galaxy unprotected?" The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human weapons tore through Thyral shields like paper. Missiles that should have been impossible to target found their marks with perfect accuracy. Energy beams of a type the Ethereal had never seen cut warships in half with single shots when it was over. The entire Thyral blockade fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, but crippled, their weapons offline. Their engines dead. Their crews alive, but helpless. Not a single human ship had been scratched. Captain Santos broadcast one final message before the human fleet departed. Tell your Archon that we have no interest in war. But if he sends another fleet, we will not be so gentle. The news of the defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The mighty Thyral Dominion, the greatest military power in known space, had been humiliated by a handful of human cargo ships, and that was when the rebellions began for thousands of years. The Thyral had conquered and enslaved dozens of species. They had crushed every uprising with brutal force, and their subjects had learned to accept their chains. But now, seeing their masters defeated so easily, hope sparked in hearts that had known only despair on the slave world of Kethfor. The oppressed Voloni people rose against their Thyral overseers. On the mining colonies of the Outer Rim, workers seized control of the facilities. Across the Dominion, species that had been beaten down for generations found their courage. The Thyral military, already weakened by supply shortages, could not respond quickly enough. Rebellions that would have been crushed in days now burned for weeks. And with each victory, more oppressed peoples joined the fight. The Dominion began to fracture like ice in spring sunlight. Meanwhile, the Vareshi hegemony faced its own disaster. Without the economic stability that human economists had provided, the great trading houses turned on each other. Alliances that had lasted for centuries shattered as resources grew scarce. Civil war erupted across hegemony space. Faction fought faction, world fought world, and the once proud insectoid empire tore itself apart from within. The Radani collective fared no better. Cut off from their outer territories by the communication collapse, the central government lost control. Separatist movements that had been whispered about for generations suddenly found their voice. Resource-rich systems declared independence, and the collective could do nothing to stop them. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy crumbled. Empires that had seemed eternal vanished almost overnight, and the universe that the elder races had known for millions of years ceased to exist. And through it all, humanity watched from a distance on Earth. The government released a single statement in response to the chaos. We did not cause this. We simply stopped preventing it. The galaxy must find its own balance now. Some species sent desperate messages to humanity, begging for help. The humans responded with sympathy, but did not intervene. We are not your saviors, Ambassador Elena Vasquez explained in a broadcast to the galaxy. We are not your servants. We offered partnership, and you rejected it. Now you must learn to stand on your own. It seemed harsh, but the humans knew that rushing to help would only repeat the old pattern. The elder races needed to learn that they could not take others for granted. They needed to understand that every species, no matter how young or small, had valued the Kethmari and the Alani. The two species that had voted with humanity reached out with different intentions. They did not beg for rescue. Instead, they asked for alliance. We saw what you were, the Kethmari ambassador said, her crystalline body glowing with warm light. We knew your worth when others were blind. Let us build something new together. Humanity accepted. Trade routes opened between human space and Kethmari territory. Alani engineers worked alongside human scientists, and a new coalition began to form, small but growing, built on mutual respect rather than domination. But the peace would not last. Archon Vixarian, humiliated and desperate, made one final decision. He would not accept defeat. He would not negotiate. He would not surrender. Instead, he sent messengers to every elder race still capable of fighting. He called in ancient debts and made new promises. He gathered every warship that could still fly, We will crush Earth itself. He declared to his followers, we will burn their homeworld to ash and scatter their people across the stars. And when we are done, no species will ever dare to defy us again. The response surprised even Vessarion. 9 different species contributed ships to his cause. They were all desperate, all humiliated, all hungry for revenge when the fleet was assembled. It numbered 12,000 warships, the largest military force in galactic history. They set course for the Sol system. For Earth, for the heart of human civilization, Varian stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. This time, there would be no mercy. He did not know that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 200 years. He did not understand that every insult, every rejection, every act of contempt had only made the humans more determined. He was about to learn the terrible price of underestimating humanity. And the lesson would be written in fire across the stars. The Allied fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, and even the most hardened veterans gasped at the sight before them. 12,000 warships stretched across the void like a wall of metal and fire, bristling with weapons. Capable of destroying entire worlds, Archon Vexarion stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and surveyed his armada with satisfaction. 9 species had answered his call, contributing their finest vessels to this moment of vengeance. Humanity ends today, he announced to his assembled commanders. Their precious Earth will burn, and their scattered colonies will fall one by one. This is the price of defiance. The fleet advanced toward the 3rd planet from the sun, a small blue world covered in water and green land, the birthplace of the species that had caused so much trouble. And then, between the fleet and Earth, the human defenders appeared. 400 ships. Vexarion laughed when he saw the numbers. 400 against 12,000 was not a battle. It was suicide. They send toys to face us, mocked the Varishi faction commander. Perhaps they hope we will die of laughter, Admiral Chun. Wei stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the enemy fleet approach. His face was calm, his hands steady at his sides. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for what was to come. Admiral, his communications officer reported, the enemy fleet is hailing us. They demand our immediate surrender. Chun Wei nodded slowly. Open a channel. The holographic image of Archon Vessarion appeared before him. The great serpent's eyes gleamed with triumph and cruelty. Human, Vexarion hissed, you stand before the greatest military force ever assembled. Surrender now, and I may show mercy to your civilians. Resist, and I will turn your world to glass. Chun Wei studied the alien for a long moment before responding. Archon, I will give you this one chance. Turn your fleet around and leave our system. Do this, and no one needs to die today. Vexarion's laughter echoed across the communication channel. 400 ships threaten 12,000. Your arrogance is amusing. Human, but it will not save you. You misunderstand, Chun Wei said quietly. I am not threatening you. I am trying to save your lives. The communication channel closed, and Vexarion ordered his fleet to attack. 12,000 warships surged forward, their weapons charging, their crews hungry for destruction. They expected the human fleet to scatter or retreat. They expected fear and desperation. What they got was something else entirely. The human ships did not move. They held their positions in perfect formation, waiting, and then Admiral Chun Wei gave a single command. Show them who we are. Reality itself seemed to bend around the human vessels. Weapons that the galaxy had never seen activated for the first time. Technologies that humanity had developed in secret over 2 centuries came online in an instant. The first wave of Thyral ships simply vanished. One moment they were there, and the next they were gone, crushed into points smaller than atoms by gravity manipulation weapons that turned mass against itself. The second wave fared no better. Phase shift torpedoes appeared inside enemy ships without warning, bypassing shields entirely. Vessels exploded from within, their crews never understanding what had killed them, and then the F-tile denial field activated a wave of energy spread outward from the human fleet. And suddenly the Allied armada found itself trapped. Their hyperspace drives refused to function. Their emergency retreat systems went dark. There was no escape. What is happening? Vexarian screamed, watching his ships die by the hundreds. What are these weapons? No one could answer him. No one understood what they were facing. The human fleet began to advance. And it was not a battle. It was an education energy beams of impossible precision. Cut through the largest warships like surgical tools. Missiles that changed course mid-flight hunted down fleeing vessels with patient determination. Defensive systems that should have been impenetrable failed completely against weapons they were never designed to face. Admiral Chen Wei opened a broadcast channel to the entire enemy fleet. His voice was calm, almost gentle, as he spoke. For 2 centuries, we built your roads and healed your sick and fed your hungry. We asked nothing in return except to be treated as equals. We worked the jobs you considered beneath you. We solved the problems you ignored. We held your civilization together while you mocked us as primitives. A Vareshi dreadnought exploded in the background. 3 Thyral cruisers crumpled like paper. You repaid our kindness with contempt. You answered our friendship with insults. And when we finally asked to be left in peace, you came to destroy our home. The human fleet cut through the enemy armada like a blade through water. 4 hours into the battle, 9,000 alien ships had been destroyed. Today, we stopped being kind, Chen Wei continued, his voice hardening. Today, you learn what humanity is truly capable of. We hid our strength because we did not want to rule you. We wanted to live beside you as neighbors and friends. The remaining 3,000 enemy ships had stopped fighting. Their crews watched, in stunned horror as the human vessels surrounded them, weapons still glowing with terrible energy. But you could not accept our friendship. You could only understand power. So here is power. Chen Wei paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 200 years of patience, finally exhausted. Surrender now, or there will be nothing left to bury. One by one, the surviving ships powered down their weapons and transmitted their surrender. There was no debate, no hesitation. They had seen what humanity could do, and they wanted no more of it. Our conversarian was captured alive. His flagship was disabled and boarded by human marines. And the great serpent who had ruled for 3,000 years was brought before Admiral Chen Wei in chains. Why? Vexarian demanded, his voice broken and confused. Why did you hide your power? Why did you pretend to be weak? Chen Wei looked at the fallen tyrant with something that might have been pity. Because strength without restraint is tyranny. We had the power to conquer the galaxy from the moment we joined the Council. We chose not to because we believed there was a better way. You could have ruled everything, Vexarian whispered. We did not want to rule. Chen Wei replied, we wanted to be neighbors. We wanted to be friends. We wanted to build something together with the other species of the galaxy. Not an empire, but a community. He shook his head sadly. You forced us to remind you what we are capable of. That was your choice, not ours. As the prisoners were processed and the battlefield was cleared, communications began flooding in from across the galaxy. But these messages did not come from governments or militaries. They came from ordinary citizens, the oppressed. Peoples of the Tharal Dominion sent their thanks. The common workers of the Vareshi hegemony celebrated in the streets. Enslaved species across the galaxy watched the news and wept with joy. They did not see the battle as a human victory. They saw it as the end of their chains. One message came from a young Valorni girl on the former slave world of Kethfor. It was simple and heartfelt. Thank you for showing us that the masters can fall. Thank you for teaching us that we do not have to be afraid. We will remember what you did for the rest of our lives." Admiral Chen Wei read the message in his quarters that night. He read it several times. And when he was finished, he sat in silence for a long while. The battle was over, but something new was beginning. Across the galaxy, beings who had been told they were worthless were discovering their own strength. Species that had been crushed for generations were learning to stand. Humanity had not set out to start a revolution. They had simply wanted to be treated fairly. But sometimes, the smallest acts of defiance can change everything, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Earth, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The old empires existed only in history books now, their grand palaces empty, their once proud fleets scattered and gone. The Thyral Dominion had collapsed completely within 3 months of Archon Vexarian's capture. Without his iron grip holding it together, the empire fractured into dozens of independent states. And the species that had suffered under Thyral rule finally knew freedom. The Hareshi hegemony had split into 17 separate republics, each one governed by elected leaders rather than hereditary rulers. The great trading houses still existed, but they answered to the people now instead of the other way around. The Oridani collective had reformed itself from the ground up. The old aristocracy had been swept away by peaceful revolution, and a new federation had risen in its place, one where every world had a voice, and every citizen had rights across the galaxy. The story was the same. Tyranny had fallen, and something new was being born in the Great Chamber where the Galactic Council had once met. A different gathering now took place. Representatives from over 100 species had come together to sign a new agreement. The founding charter of the Interstellar Compact ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. She was older now, her hair almost entirely gray, but her eyes still held the same quiet strength they always had. "We are here today to begin again," she said, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "The old order is gone, destroyed by its own arrogance and cruelty. We have a chance now to build something better, something that honors every species, regardless of how old or powerful they might be." The charter she presented was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It guaranteed equal representation for all member species, from the youngest to the most ancient. It established universal rights for all sentient beings. It created systems of mutual aid that would prevent any world from being exploited or abandoned. When the reading was finished, the Kethmari ambassador rose to speak. Her crystalline form caught the light and scattered it into rainbows across the chamber. "We have a question for humanity," she said, her voice like music. "Will you lead this new compact? You have proven your strength and your wisdom. No one would object if you claimed that right." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Elena Vasquez. She smiled, the same calm, knowing smile she had worn when she walked out of this chamber 1 year ago. "No," she said simply. "We will not." A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembly, and Elena raised her hand for silence. "We did not tear down the old empires to build our own," she explained. "We did not fight so that humans could rule the galaxy. We fought so that no species would ever be dismissed as primitive again. We fought so that every voice would be heard." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from species that had once mocked humanity, from peoples who had been slaves, from civilizations both ancient and young. "Lead yourselves," she said. "Build your own futures. Make your own choices. We will be here if you need us, not as masters, but as partners. Not as rulers, but as friends." The vote was called, and the charter passed unanimously. Cheers erupted through the chamber, and for the first time in galactic history, representatives of every species celebrated together as equals, Later that day, a private reception was held for the founding members. It was here that the Kethmari ambassador approached Elena Vasquez with a question that had been troubling her. "I must know," she said softly. "Why did humanity never reveal its true strength before? You endured centuries of contempt and mockery. You could have demanded respect at any time. Why did you wait?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring out the viewport at the stars beyond, because we hoped we would never have to. She finally replied, "We believed that if we worked hard enough, if we helped enough, if we proved ourselves through our actions rather than our weapons, the galaxy would eventually see us as equals." She turned to face the Kethmari ambassador, and there was sadness in her eyes, deep sadness that had been there for a long time. We wanted to believe the universe was better than it was. We wanted to believe that kindness could triumph over cruelty. We kept our strength hidden because we hoped we would never need to use it. And now? The ambassador asked. Elena's smile returned, smaller but genuine. Now, perhaps the galaxy can become what we always dreamed it could be. Not because we forced it, but because the old walls have fallen and something new can grow. The Alani diplomat, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. He was a gentle giant, nearly 3 meters tall, with eyes that seemed to hold all the compassion in the universe. "There is a saying among my people," he rumbled softly, "that the strongest souls are those who can endure suffering without becoming cruel. You humans suffered greatly under the contempt of the elder races. Yet you did not become like them." He placed his massive hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. "That, I think, is your greatest strength, not your weapons. Not your technology, but your ability to remain kind when the galaxy gave you every reason to be harsh." The reception continued late into the night. And when it finally ended, Elena Vasquez found herself alone on a balcony overlooking the stars. Admiral Chen Wei found her there an hour later. He had removed his uniform and wore simple civilian clothes, looking less like a legendary warrior and more like a tired old friend. "It is finally over," he said, standing beside her. "No," Elena replied. "It is finally beginning." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ships of 100 different species come and go from the station. "Do you think they understand?" Chen Wei asked eventually. "Do you think they truly understand what we tried to teach them?" Elena considered the question carefully before answering. "Some of them do," she said. "Some of them will learn in time. And some," she shrugged, "some will probably never understand. But that is not our responsibility. We showed them the way. They have to walk it themselves." Chen Wei nodded slowly. "The young ones give me hope. The species that were slaves, the peoples that were oppressed, they remember what it felt like to be dismissed. I think they will be different." "I think so too," Elena agreed. And the months that followed, humanity kept its promise. Human teachers returned to foreign worlds, not as servants, but as respected educators. Human doctors built hospitals and trained local medical staff. Human engineers helped rebuild infrastructure without demanding payment or recognition. But things were different now. When a human worker arrived on a distant planet, the local population did not look down on them. They looked up. Children gathered to hear stories about Earth. Young people studied human languages and history. And everywhere, the phrase became common: never mistake human kindness for human weakness. It was repeated in trading posts and diplomatic halls, in schools and homes, in every language across the galaxy. It became a reminder of what had happened and a warning against repeating old mistakes on Earth. In classrooms around the world, children learned a new lesson. Their teachers told them about the centuries when humanity had been mocked and dismissed, about the day when their ancestors had finally stood up for themselves, and about the choice they had made afterward. "We could have conquered the galaxy," the teachers explained. "We had the power to rule every world and dominate every species. But we chose not to. We chose to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm, to offer our hand instead of our fist. The children listened with wide eyes, and when they asked why, their teachers gave them the same answer. Because power is not measured by how much you can destroy. It is measured by how much you can build, and by how long you can wait for others to notice. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The interstellar compact grew stronger with each generation. Wars became rare, then almost unheard of. Trade flourished between species that had once been enemies. And the galaxy entered an era of peace and cooperation unlike anything it had ever known. And at the heart of it all, quiet and patient and kind, humanity continued to do what it had always done, helping where it was needed, building where things were broken and waiting with endless patience. For others to understand, on the anniversary of the founding of the Compact, a ceremony was held in the Great Chamber. Representatives from every member species gathered to honor the past and celebrate the future. The current human ambassador, a young woman named Keiko Tanaka, stood at the same podium where Elena Vasquez had stood so many years before. She looked out at the assembly and smiled. My predecessor once said that we wanted to believe the galaxy could be better than it was, she said. Today, looking out at all of you, I know that it can be. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was filled with quiet pride. We are no longer primitives tolerated by ancient powers. We are no longer servants working in the shadows. We are partners, equals, friends, all of us together, building a future that belongs to everyone. The chamber erupted in applause, and among the cheering delegates, beings of every shape and size and color celebrated side by side, outside the viewport. The stars burned on forever patient, ancient, and full of possibility, and somewhere among those stars, on a small blue world called Earth, children looked up at the night sky and dreamed of all the wonders that waited for them. The galaxy was theirs now, not to conquer, but to share, not to rule, but to cherish, not to destroy, but to build, and that made all the difference.